Hellboy is returning to theaters with a new actor already experienced in Stranger Things. I'm Sasha Perel Raver, and this is Screen Junkies News. Late yesterday, The Hollywood Reporter broke news that paranormal investigator Hellboy would be returning to theaters. But producers Larry Gordon and Lloyd Levin, who previously worked on Hellboy and Hellboy: The Golden Army with director Guillermo Del Toro and actor Ron Perlman, have opted to start from scratch with a whole new creative team. The new film, which has the working title Hellboy: Rise of the Blood Queen, will instead be helmed by director Neil Marshall, known for his work on The Descent and Game of Thrones, and will now star Stranger Things actor David Harbour. Is this new incarnation of Hellboy destined for immortality, or are we going to hell in a handbasket? Here with me to discuss are Mark Andreyko, Joe Starr, and on social, Daniel Radford. Hi!
Morning.
All right, Kitty Boos.
Daniel.
So when we talk about Hellboy, Guillermo Del Toro is such a huge part of that franchise, of those movies. Joe, what are we missing here by not having him being involved?
Well, so for me, I'm not a Hellboy reader. I've never really read the comics. I have a lot of friends that have and love them, and so for them, those two movies don't feel like Hellboy. But for me, I really enjoy those two movies. I love the first one, Rasputin, and then Cronin, the weird Nazi guy that's filled with sand and he's got blade arms, has such a cool look. The second movie gets a little goofy, but I like the concepts in it, sort of fantasy tropes living in modern times and slumming it, the practical effects in the troll market.
Yeah.
And then
the troll market's amazing.
Yeah, the troll market is gorgeous. And even the Golden Army looks really cool. It has this weird sort of steampunk magic, sort of weird Warhammery element to it that I really like. But I get that for a lot of people, this movie is not Hellboy in the slightest, but I really love it. For me, Ron Perlman is, without, again, it's weird to say, but without having that comic book knowledge, Ron Perlman to me is Hellboy, like Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man.
Well, I mean,
Ron Perlman's really good casting, but these movies, the first two movies, are definitely Guillermo Del Toro's Hellboy.
Yeah.
In the same way that the movie The Shining is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. There's
Sure.
a lot of similarities, but Mignola's artwork is much more gothic and much more dark, which will lend itself towards where they're going now, I think, just because Millennium Pictures is a smaller studio. They don't have $300 million to throw at a movie, so it will be much more moody and evocative.
well, that's interesting, but you bring up Ron Perlman and Ron Perlman sort of being Hellboy for you. Ron Perlman was fighting so hard to get the third one made. He was tweeting out saying, you guys, come on, we deserve this. Let's get this third one out. Let's get it trending. I mean, that was back in, 2015? Mm-hmm. He talked about getting a third Hellboy made forever. How bummed is he to hear this announcement? What do you think, Mark?
I'm sure he's not pleased, but I'm sure part of him might be relieved that he's got to be close to 70 now and having all that all that prosthetic makeup, and that suit was heavy. Every time you saw him go to a children's hospital dressed as Hellboy, I was like, you're going to heaven, because I'm in my 40s and I wouldn't wear that nonsense for 9-10 weeks at a time. But let's put it in, let's quantify it. He's also a working actor who's well respected, and the affection for people who loved him in this will probably get him a lot more work because people are going to reach out to him now. So I'm sure it's a bummer, but it is a first world problem to not be able to finish your big budget trilogy.
Well, and I hope that's the case for him, that this opens more doors. Obviously, Perlman's always going to work because he's Perlman and he's such a specific guy. But I get how bummed they are. They were sort of, him and Del Toro were sort of consoling each other on Twitter last night via the tweets. I get it. I love writing honest trailers, and when I'm inevitably replaced by someone younger and much sexier, I will not just be bummed by the lack of paycheck. I'll be bummed that I don't get to write them anymore and have been replaced by a young, pretty person.
Well, I gotta tell you.
You haven't gotten the memo yet?
Oh, don't go, Joe Starr.
Sad trumpet noise.
No, don't do it. When you talk about sexy, I'm sorry, Guillermo Del Toro is one of those dudes who, within the fan community and within the entertainment journalist community, all the girls I know have crushes on him because he's
like
so talented.
He's like a Mexican teddy bear. He's like Winnie the Pooh meets J.R.R. Tolkien.
He is, but also he's such a talented, affable, wonderful guy.
And it's his passion, too. The passion, no matter what your job is, if you love what you're doing, you're instantly sexy. And he's so passionate. I think that's part of the problem with Guillermo. He loves so much stuff that he commits to so many things. I'm wondering if maybe, because it's taken so long for a Hellboy 3, because, every day Guillermo Del Toro is attached to 6 or 7 different projects. I think maybe the length of time between the first one and the second one, and now, how long has it been since the second one? Almost 10 years now? Is it 8 to 10 years?
Daniel Radford. Yep. Daniel Radford on socials. You're going to Googles. But what do we expect? Because, like you've said, a Guillermo Del Toro film has his stamp, it has his visuals, it has so much of him in it because he is so passionate. What do we expect from a Neil Marshall movie? I mean, what do we know a few things about him from The Descent and from like some episodes he's done of Game of Thrones and Constantine, but what do you guys think we're going to get out of a Neil Marshall movie?
Well, I think just sort of based on what Mark was saying about Hellboy being a lot darker and sort of much more drowned in shadows and muted colors, just based on the film The Descent, I think Neil Marshall is a guy who can definitely nail that look and feel. Like, I mean, Hellboy is supposed to be it's supposed to have a lot more horror elements to it. And so I think Marshall can definitely sort of connect to that look that I think people were missing from the first two movies.
Also, his first movie is probably my favorite movie he did. He did a movie called Dog Soldiers years ago about the equivalent of the British National Guard doing exercises in the woods and then werewolves attack, and it's really great. But
I'm adding that to my list.
Yeah,
but with something about Neil Marshall that I think will go hand in hand with both an R-rated Hellboy, because they said this is going to be R-rated, and with Millennium Films not being Sony or Warner Brothers, is you can hide a lot in shadows. You can, and also what's great about Mike Mignola's artwork is there's so much what you don't see, what's in the darkness is what's scary. And I think if they play that up and not try and do the opulence of a Del Toro movie, I think they could really have something. And Neil Marshall's been in the trenches doing a lot of TV for a number of years now. It's been a while since The Descent, so this is his chance to come back with a property and kind of put his own stamp on it. And I'm assuming that with this newer, more streamlined version that I'm assuming from Millennium, that Mike will be involved as well, much more involved than he necessarily might have been with Guillermo. So it could be really interesting. I think it's going to be a very different type of Hellboy.
Well, and we've also got a new actor. We've got David Harbour. David Harbour, who I think everybody fell in love with during Stranger Things. He's one of those guys who's been around forever. I mean, you brought up, Mark, he was the second boyfriend. He was Gyllenhaal's second boyfriend in Brokeback. He's Anna Faris's boyfriend and Anna Faris's husband in Brokeback, and he and Jake were going to go up to that cabin up north before Jake car blew up. Yep, that's right. So he's been around forever, but now to have this kind of massive leading role, what do we think about the casting of David Harbour, Joestar?
I mean, I like Harbour a lot, but again, I can't. I have a hard time not seeing Hellboy as Ron Perlman. I know that my wife will never forgive this. She will probably retroactively go back and burn Stranger Things out of her brain just in fiery vengeance because she just loves Ron Perlman as Hellboy so much that she will erase David Harbour from reality with like her weird Legion powers. Cool. But I think he could do fine.
Okay.
I think it'll be really interesting. I think I'm wondering if they're going to go younger with Hellboy, a little bit, because he is a million years old or whatever in the book. And I think Harbour's got a much more warm quality to him. I don't know if he's going to be a softer Hellboy, if that makes any sense, but I think he might be a little bit more human, because the thing that Perlman does is gruff and annoying and little moments of cuteness with the cats or whatever. And Harbour brings an entirely different energy as an actor. So I wonder if that'll transform the interpretation of Hellboy as well.
Yeah, you're sort of bad dad trying to make good.
Yeah.
Well, before we started the show, Mark, you were talking about the title. So Hellboy Rise of the Blood Queen. This comes from a very specific Hellboy storyline. Tell us about it, Mark.
Yeah, it comes from a trilogy of graphic novels that feature a character called Nimue, who traditionally in mythology was the witch goddess who enchanted Merlin. And in some variations of the myth, she's also the Lady of the Lake. All that Arthurian stuff, there's as many different permutations. But she's a witch in this who seeks to destroy the witches of England, and she wants to gather an army as well. So it's a really, really great bunch of stories. And a part of it was illustrated by a guy named Duncan Fagredo. Mike didn't illustrate all of it. And he's also an amazing artist. So there's some really great visuals to take from. My only concern is the visuals are so great and so detailed. Millennium Pictures has never done anything of this scale yet. It doesn't mean they can't. No one thought New Line was going to make the Lord of the Rings movies great. I am in their corner. I'm rooting for them.
Yeah.
But picking this trilogy in particular is there's a lot there.
And this is specifically a trilogy.
Isn't everything now?
Well, but based on the source material.
Well, yeah, based on what we know, based on the source material, the little bits and pieces we're getting out. But I think everything that's based on a comic book is now they're going to assume it's a trilogy.
There's going to be 15 more films. I think best case, you get this full story over several films. I think worst case, since it's got a much lower budget, it's sort of redo on a franchise that's trying to be closer to the source material. I think worst case, you get another Dredd, which isn't a terrible case because people
it's
love
better
that
to have
movie.
one great movie and never get another one than 3 bad ones.
Yeah.
Well, as you guys are talking about this, though, and as you're describing the storyline, who's going to be the awesome witchy lady?
Well, I mean, take your pick of 30 to 60-year-old great British actresses. I mean, you could go Kate Winslet, you could go Helen Mirren, you could go Kate Blanchett, you could go Kate Beckinsale. I mean, there's so many people. You could go with someone unknown because once again, there's lots of prosthetics and all that sort of thing. Helen Mirren would be nice just because of the symmetry of her playing Morgan Le Fay and John Borman's Excalibur. There's a tether to Arthurian legend.
That's great.
And she brings such gravitas to everything she does. I mean, I could literally watch her read the phone book and give her an Oscar nomination for it.
This might be a boring choice, but Eva Green, because I'm pretty sure she is actually a witch, and so they could save on a lot of special effects budget just by Eva Green actually casting spells.
But until she and Tim Burton break up, I think she's only going to be making Tim Burton movies for the next 10 years.
That's true. She's got to do the crazy hair dentry thing for a while. But I love that this could be anything.
It could literally be Helen Mirren, who is so fantastic. She's even great in the openings of documentary now, all the way down to like somebody as young as Eva Green or whatever. But we wanted to know from you guys who you thought would be a great addition to the Hellboy franchise, the new reboot. So let's go over to Danielle. What do the people have to say?
Well, first of all, so the Golden Compass, that's a completely different movie. So the Golden Army came out in 2008.
So 9 years.
It's been a minute. A lot of people are also agreeing that they just don't see Hellboy without Ron Perlman. At Delicia_Renee, hey girl, says, I would give the trailer a shot, but Hellboy without Perlman and Del Toro doesn't feel right. At Devin Colson also says, it's a heads or tails kind of thing for me. Sure, I'd love to see a new Hellboy movie, and Harbor is a great choice, but without Perlman, thinking emoji.
So remember how we all felt when Warner Brothers announced that some guy named Heath Ledger from 10 Things I Hate About You was playing the Joker.
True story.
So if it's a good actor and a good director and a good script, magic can happen. The reinterpretation of things. The only good thing about reboots, to so many of them, is it allows us to reimagine these characters, and if they're done well, they can coexist. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt because the source material is really great.
Absolutely. Are there any actors specifically they want to see join this new reboot?
Well, we've got at Some Old Nerd says that he would love to see Alan Tudyk as Abe Sapien.
Yeah.
Which does sound pretty fun. At KD_VYS, don't do this to me, you guys. Says anyone but the inevitable pick of The Rock.
Nothing wrong with The Rock.
They do not want The Rock in the Hellboy franchise.
This movie, maybe there is.
All right, fine. There's the one place where you can't put The Rock, but we want to know who you would like to see join this reboot, and how do you feel about no more Perlman? Let us know in the comments below. You can tweet us at SJ News. Of course, you can always click here for more internets. And of course, this Friday at 4 p.m., live right here on Screen Junkies News, tune in to our all-new show, Flickbait, featuring the Honest Trailers guys. We'll see you soon.